Do you read me over?
Be advised, you are coming in weak and unreadable.
Say again, Com Tower. This is Pacho. Do you read me over?
Pacho, this is Com Tower. I read you Lima Charlie.
Com Tower, Com Tower. Request permission to launch and commence the field op. Over.
Stand by. Pacho, permission granted. I say again, permission granted.
Roger that. Launching podcast in 3, 2. You are now entering the field op with your host, Pacho Correa, Chief Warrant Officer 3, United States Marine Corps retired. Get some. Hurrah!
Get some. All right, what's going on, everybody? Hey, it's Baby Friday, Friday Night Eve. Goddamn, it's almost the weekend. Let's get all the pleasantries out of the way. All week, I've been in classes, trying to get some continuing education out of the way. By the way, once you're a civilian, it doesn't stop. And just been doing a lot of talking, so that's why my voice is a little bit weird. But let's get all the pleasantries out of the way. When was the last time? Have you taken a hard look as to where you're going to be financially 5, 10, 15 years from now? A lot of us who are no longer in the big green mean machine, we think that we have this magical pot of money that if something were to happen to us, what's going to happen with our family? Well, a couple of things is what's going to happen. Your family's going to be depending on whether your survivor benefit plan or dependency indemnity compensation or DIC from the VA. It's only going to get a portion of your either VA entitlement or your military retirement. So wouldn't it make sense to put certain things and strategies together so that way you're not at the end of the day, you can have peace of mind and make sure that your family doesn't have to change their lifestyle because, we're all going to go. We just don't know for the reason and why or how for that matter. So putting strategies together that I can help you with, we can have a free 1-hour strategy session. I will show you the things and out there. I'll give you everything right there. You take the plan with you. There's nothing absolutely that you have to buy on that day. It's just a conversation. You take it with you, and whenever you're ready to implement such plan, you already have it in your cargo pocket, and then I can help you execute if that makes any sense. All right. The other thing is that I got some amazing news. I'm not sure if you guys remember Larry David. He's one of the Marines, 84-year-old Marine who I assisted with his VA claims and benefits not that long ago. And he finally, after many years of going with the VA, we got him to 100%. So he was able to finally be able to, get in-home care. You also get a compensation to get his family members be a part of, get compensated for as a caregiver as well. So many different things, everybody. So you want to take advantage and put it for those claims and benefits. And if you need help and guidance, I will more than gladly show you how to do it. All I ask is that, hey, be coachable, and because I'm going to show you how to fish. I'm going to give you how to do it. So that way you don't have to pay somebody else or give a portion of your claims and benefits to a claim shark or somebody's going to charge you an arm and a leg. So I'm going to help you with that. And so that way, and so that way you know how to do it in the event that, hey, in my absence, at least you know the plan as well. And that we also help you how to strategize that money, so we don't just blow it on the next best thing, and you actually, not only for you but for your family. Make sense? Sound fair? And look, this show is all about we support the American Constitution, and the right to bear arms, freedom of speech, and all the other great things that the Constitution brings to us as American citizens. So if you like what you hear, great. Stick around, like, subscribe, and follow. Make sure you follow me on all the other social media platforms. I'm not on Snapchat. I tried it. It wasn't for me. Pretty much you can find me in everything else. Or if we can agree to disagree, you don't like the show, that's okay too. Check out something from situated.com. Support a local podcaster on there. Brian Colbert's an amazing individual. So huge shout out to him and the rest of his team. All right. So anyways, so we got a pretty good show for you today. Let me get all my notes together. I want to talk, as I was getting ready to put the show together, and I'll, usually in the mornings is I scroll through social media to, just kind of see what's out there, maybe something that I can talk about today. And unfortunately, we had one of our own pass away this week. So huge shout out to Corporal Malik. He was a really good friend of ours. One of I call them kids because excuse me. By the time I got to 4th LAR, 4th Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion, which is it is a reserve unit out of Camp Pendleton. They used to be up in Talega, where if you're familiar with the movie Heartbreak Ridge, that's where. Let me fix my mic a little bit. There you go. If you're familiar with the movie Heartbreak Ridge, it was actually filmed in that camp, and got some of the Marines. This is back in the 80s, but some of the Marines that I ended up serving with, were in some way, shape, or form when all that happened over there. So, anyways, and I was part of that unit when I got out of the Marine Corps and I went back home here to my home state of Florida. Ended up going back to California back then, because I was quote unquote in love with my kid's mom. And that's another story. Nonetheless, I ended up being a reservist for about a year after I got out of the military, and I was drilling, what we call drilling, or in the Army they call it AGR, Active Guard Reserve. I was part of the staff. Actually, no, I was a reservist myself while I was a civilian at the same time. And then later on, I actually, a year later, I went back into active duty and went to other units. And I just ended up coming full circle as part of the permanent, as the active duty staff at a reserve unit, which they call it inspector instructor duty, I&I duty in the Marine Corps. So nonetheless, a huge shout out to Jacob P6. How are you, buddy? And King, long live Cesar Chavez. I don't know what the fuck that means, but okay, long live him. Anyways, so I ended up coming back to that unit as part of the active duty staff as a sergeant. So when after 9/11 happened and all these things were going on, pretty much, President George W. Bush basically said, "Hey, we're gonna go on war on terrorism," and they stood up this is the first time in over 50 years where they stood up an entire reserve battalion to go into combat. Now, one thing that everybody needs to remember is that it's a war on terrorism. But it's not really a war, because a war, it has to be an act of Congress, and then in moving time forward to today, this is just a conflict. It is not a war, because if not, then everybody will be up in arms. I mean, a lot of things, and I'm talking about Iran right now. It's just a conflict, and the president has the right to send Marines, because they are his 911's force. It is written in a doctrine as well. So again, moving time back, so we were sent over there. We stood up an entire battalion, and we took all these reservists, or not in a bad way. However, a lot of people, because of the Army commercials, they see, they call it a weekend warrior, right? However, whether you're Army, Navy, Marine Corps, doesn't matter. That term it's not, I don't see it as derogatory. It's just people who still raise the right hand and wrote a blank check to our great nation of ours. And in the event that something goes down, hey, you can send me over there to fight the good fight. So huge shout out to everybody, on the reserve side, because hey, there's some really good, smart individuals, and I learned a lot of great things from when I was at that unit. Anyways, so I was going back to what I was saying. I was scrolling through social media, and unfortunately, one of our own passed away. I don't know all the details. I'm kind of guessing as to what happened, because I'm trying to fill in the missing information. I have an idea, and it's just, nonetheless, it's just another brother that's no longer with us, and now he's posting and pulling duty up in the big pearly gates. So a huge semper fi to Malik, great kid, by the way. But so after the initial invasion of Iraq, from March to April timeframe, that's when we got deployed. I mean, pretty much not only they sent 4th LAR, they also sent 1st LAR, which is right next door to us, because we ended up moving that entire unit to another part of Camp Pendleton, because they wanted all, the reserve and the active duty site together. Anyway, so they stood up this entire battalion, and major combat operations, they just slow down drastically. So it was crazy. The insurgency stages, the whole ambush, small arm fire attacks, RPG strikes, IEDs, that shit didn't, literally didn't exist when we got into country. We were still in the good graces of the Iraqi people. And as a matter of fact, because when you're deploying to combat, it's not like, hey, everybody, let's go all at once. It's like, they do it in what we call sticks, or you got your forward, then you got your headquarters, and then you got the follow-on group, right? So you go in stages, and so a commanding officer, I think what the hell was this guy's name? The name kind of escapes me. Anyways, him and his staff and everybody, they went forward, and they went on the push. Then we got, the rest of the group followed up, and then we just kind of waves going in. So you're kind of playing catch up along the way, right? So, but initially, as we were, we crossed that line of departure from Kuwait into Iraq, there was no issues, no problems, pretty much by that time. I mean, we were just kind of fighting a fledgling Iraqi force, which is, for all intent and purpose, again, but never underestimate the enemy. I'm just saying that, and plus, if you were in a LAV, a light armored vehicle in the Army, they call them strikers. We already had a pretty good name for ourselves in a bad way in the Iraqi people, in Saddam Hussein's forces' eyes. Like, hey, they were scared of us, because these things, it's a can of whip ass. Basically, it's got an entire, an entire squad of Marines who are just trigger happy and ready to make shit happen, and just really pissed off and ready to make stuff happen. And then obviously us, the supporting side, I was in transportation, motor T. Obviously we also were carrying personnel in our vehicles, in our Humvees, in our back then we still had 5-ton trucks. So we were just pushing in there. So I'm just kind of painting the picture so you get an idea. So, and it was actually, so we ended up being, part of Task Force Scorpion, which is built around 4th Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion. And we ended up doing combat operations, all throughout as we crossed the line of departure. And mind you, when you're in a combat operations, and pretty much, so it's not that everything is fair, fair game, but you can leave if a vehicle breaks down. It is that depending on what the rules of engagement are, you can leave that. You can torch that vehicle. You can put an incendiary grenade on the engine block, and a couple of incendiary grenades on the vehicle. Torch it. Try to destroy it as much as you can, so that way the enemy doesn't get to reuse the parts against you, because that shit does happen. And you'll be amazed as to these people can. It's like you just parked your vehicle in a bad area in whatever town, and in minutes it's like that vehicle is completely taken apart. Which along the way we almost lost an LAV, and we ended up towing it with a regular vehicle. Shout out to East. He's not listening to the show. Anyways, so we were towing all these vehicles, and we had some small pop fires here and there, not a big deal. But the whole purpose was to secure of this task force was to secure major supply routes, or MSRs as we used to call them, and then especially supply route suit, because people were getting. They were just getting hemmed up with sniper fire, small arm fire, and all these routes. So basically it was to protect the logistic convoys moving in between Baghdad and and forward operating base Dogwood, which we ended up going over there. So, and basically we're just hunting down insurgents. I mean, that was all our job. On my side, we were more on the logistics supply route, which we did have a couple of LAV, one or two LAVs kind of going with us, but even our vehicles had 50 caliber machine guns mounted. They also had squad automatic weapons. We also had, Marine. All of us were equipped with also weapons and stuff. So what made it task force? Well, it wasn't just one unit. It was combined force between all of these reserve units of 4th Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalions. We had 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, and we also had infantry companies as well. We have 1st Battalion, 1437, which is 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. We also had 25, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, which I think they're called the Walking Dead unit. We also had some Force Recon elements on there. We had some EOD teams, as well as some Radio Battalion elements, all comprised of all the stuff. So, I mean, it was a pretty beefed up, it was highly mobile, highly aggressive, and just very intelligence driven. So, mind you, way before, even before this 2003 huge push to Iraq, we were still fighting on the conventional war style of, we know who our enemy is, but they must be in uniform. So we shoot them, they shoot us. That kind of, somewhat still like Vietnam era fighting style. But this from that time forward, it basically completely changed the entire, the lay of the land, so to speak, as to how the enemy, the enemy now hides and looks just like regular people. They start later on. They start getting creative and putting IEDs on the ground, on the roads, and all these other things. So our main role was brought something critical, like mobility plus firepower. Light armored vehicles, they provide a really fast reaction capability, and heavy weapons compared to what insurgents were using at that time frame. Again, we're still kind of in the whole infancy stages of how these now moving time forward guerrilla tactics, how they applied against because for all intent and purpose, we were an invading force in their homeland, home turf, home territory, right? So obviously, after a while, after you're there for, and it wasn't just 4th LAR, it was just a shit ton of other units. It was Army units. It was just everybody. Hell, we even had Brits. We ran into Brits, Canadians, Filipino. I was just French forces. I mean, we ran into everybody. So eventually, people are going to get tired of that. Say, hey, you need to get out of our country, right? So. Because before Task Force Scorpions, all convoys used to be easy targets. Insurgents used to shoot AK-47s, which is the most popular and very preferred, weapon of insurgents all around the world. For all that matter. And let me tell you, an AK-47 is an amazing piece of gear. If anybody here wants to talk about it, feel free to let me know, and I can give you the link so you could jump on the show. But it is an amazing piece of weapon. And by the way, the only reason why the military DOD, back when it was looking right before the M16, they were looking at many different weapons to purchase. The only reason why they didn't go with the AK-47 was because it is slightly heavier than the M16. But I think they made a huge mistake, because there was one of the main, if you look at any Vietnam era type of video, what do you mainly see? And I want you, whenever you watch a documentary, what do you mainly see is service members constantly cleaning the rifle, constantly cleaning it, because that was one of the huge drawbacks of the M16, even not only the A1, but also the A2 version, is that it jammed. any little amount of dust on that thing, and it is not. By the way, if you think military grade is a good thing, is bullshit. Because we always go with the lowest bidder, and it was the cheapest, and it was lighter. But with an AK-47, you can piss on that thing, you can kick it in dirt, you can whatever, just blow it, rack it, and shoot. It'll shoot, and it is very, very accurate. It is one of the most accurate weapons that exists. That's why it is the most preferred weapon of any insurgent. So, so these guys were getting creative, and the fact of the matter is that even when we landed in country, one thing that we noticed is that all the other armed services, and I'm not pointing fingers at the Army, I'm just saying that all other services, they just painted a really soft target. As we were convoying in different routes and areas, we would just see these guys being soft. Nobody was wearing their flak jackets with their sappy plates, the bulletproof plates. And by the way, an AK-47, especially with the sappy plates of that era, because we were still using, the whole sappy plates or bulletproof plates that were still in somewhat its infancy stages. So, I mean, an AK-47 for sure can go through that shit. And also some of the Kevlars that we were using back then, an AK-47 would just easily just go right through that. So, anyways, so they were painting a lot of soft targets. They weren't wearing their what we call their battle rattle, helmet, flak jacket, sappy plates, all the other shit. And because it was hot, basically. I mean, it was like 130-degree weather. It was insanely hot. However, one thing that was stressed upon us is that, hey, don't be the one caught without your gear while we're on these routes and everything else. So, and not only that, it's just one of the things that's how we trained, that's how we did it. And basically nobody wanted to fucking die either. You know what I'm saying? So after Task Force Scorpion, we turned more, it turned us into basically hunters. We were out there. As a matter of fact, we turned a 5-ton. We fortified a 5-ton in the back. We completely gutted the back, and we put sandbags all over. And also we made it look like a soft target, but in the back we just had nothing but pissed off 03 infantry Marines getting ready, and we used this thing as basically as bait. We would go out there and wait for pop shots, and then obviously we had some of the LAVs, just seek and destroy, it was very effective. And for those Marines that got to go on that, it was a lot of fun for them. So, but that was kind of, we were just aggressively out there, going on patrol along these major supply routes. And then we started embedding these LAVs, these light armored vehicles, into our convoys as bait and to lure attackers, and just basically just to get rid of all the insurgents that were, that were out there. Well, we're very effective, but on the other side, insurgents or the enemy is very smart. Again, never underestimate your enemy. They adapted to that type of style, and that's when later on we start seeing the whole IEDs, improvised explosive devices, which is basically just a nice acronym for saying for a friggin' mine. And what they would do is there were different ways that they would do it. They could put a propane tank out on the road, and then they will completely wrap it in with tape and nails. And explosive devices were very back then. We were still using cell phones, flip phones and that type of stuff. So they will use the signal of the cell phone on that equipment to detonate it. So so they would use that. And in addition to other things, they will find RPG rounds and everything else and bury them on the road with a wire all the way up to the detonator. I mean, it's just a lot of tactic things. We used to call them lollipops on the ground. And then, but we also adapted too. And the conditions were really rough back then. I mean, it was minimal infrastructure. Again, we were kind of learning on the fly. That's where you hear these terms like counterinsurgency. That term was became really, really popular based on a book of tactics that were used during Vietnam. Then we started kind of using those tactics of that we used in Vietnam, of kind of embedding ourselves as we started transitioning into with Iraq and working with the people and everything else. We started, open areas, makeshift positions, and there was just a limited support early on. So it was just miserable. I mean, dust, heat, I mean, really bad facilities. I don't know if it was because of the fact that I grew up in Colombia, where pretty much, I drank the water anywhere, whatever the case may be. Maybe I got a third world stomach. I don't fucking know, but I didn't get sick. But we had a lot of Marines, service members as a whole, get really, really sick. They used to call it Saddam's revenge, and people, were just catching all these, stomach viruses. From being over there. So it was a lot of chaos, but morale maintained high in operations. There was a lot of aggressive operations. One thing that even the Romans, the first thing that the Romans did every time they, after a battle, they conquer a new empire or whatever the case, whatever it may be, they would put their soldiers immediately to work and reconstruct that town. What would that do? One, it will prevent a lot of issues, people, getting into trouble, doing dumb shit. So same thing. So an engaged service member, we, doing convoys, doing these things, and we try to do as minimal downtime as we could, just to prevent things, those type of things. Doesn't mean that there were, shit didn't happen, and we had people commit dumb stuff. Yes, we did, but we try to minimize it as much as we could. So, and a lot of type of fighting that we did over there this was not conventional warfare anymore. I mean, we had a lot of counter ambush operations. We had to do a lot of route security. We started implementing small unit patrol warfare, and a lot of intelligence driven. A lot of the stuff going out into town, gathering information. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I used to do is go smoke cigarettes, when I used to smoke back then, and drink tea, where all the elderly used to hang out, and just try to see what I would pick up. I was learning a little bit of Arabic, so I could catch here, words here and there, and people were still very, very friendly, very prone, very happy about us being there. So it would kind of tell us, hey, there's some weapons over there, whatever. So what the impact that we had, I guess you could say, is that it reduced successful attacks on U.S. convoys. It helps establish control over the key supply routes. It forced insurgents to change their tactics. I mean, and which later on in Fallujah, I mean, that's another shit show right there. But it demonstrated the ability and the mobility and aggression and presence. And it doesn't matter. I mean, and it also said that, hey, look, reservists can do an amazing job and a great job, and giving back to, I guess, to the Marine Corps and fight the good fight. You know what I'm saying? Which, because of this, 4th LAR Task Force Scorpion were part of units that later received recognition, including the PUC, the Presidential Citation, as well as the Combat Action Ribbon for actions during OIF. While I was there, I mean, I worked with some amazing people. Like, by the way, I want to remember Douglas Marenko, who unfortunately passed away while we were there in an operation, in a joint operation with the Navy. We were building a school for an Iraqi school for little kids, and on one of the resupplies with the team, unfortunately, his vehicle ended up crashing. He was the main operator of that vehicle, and him and they were both ejected out of the vehicle, and Marenko unfortunately passed on scene. His assistant driver, aide driver, Park, sustained a lot of injuries that he battled with for many, many years, and it wasn't until like about 5-6 years ago that unfortunately he took his own life. So it just So huge shout out. And by the way, that school has his name in a plaque in his honor out there. So, but I got to work with amazing people like him, people like John Mestes, Sean Phillips, um, you know, uh, Mike St. Johnny, Richard Valencia. Uh, I mean, and there's just so many, so many people, Rodriguez, San Miguel. I mean, a huge shout out to all Ceja. Oh man, it's just the list goes on and on. Tim Stratton, by the way, huge shout out to Master Guns or Papa or Uncle Tim, as we used to call him. It just, I got to work with some amazing people and see some amazing places that are biblical. I got to walk the Ishtar Gate. As a matter of fact, walking between the Ishtar Gate in the city of Babylon, where you pretty much read about this in the Bible. If you ever read the book The Richest Man of Babylon, I've read that book, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 times already. But it has such a, it hits home because I was there. I walked and I got the pictures. Maybe one day I'll put them on the show on the show's Facebook. But and I got to see the Lion of Babylon, which it's a monument that was there for thousands of years, and that the Nazis tried to steal it during World War II, but they couldn't, and they damaged the face of that. It was made out of stone, and unfortunately, insurgents destroyed it a couple of years later. But I also got to walk the ruins of King Nebuchadnezzar's castle, which was a site that belonged to Saddam Hussein. One of his castles is actually there, which was taken over by the 1st Marine Division. So, I just want to, just kind of, after this invasion, and just kind of thinking back after the invasion of Iraq, that just didn't go quiet. I mean, it turned out, it turned into later on into ambush warfare. Convoys were getting hit. And however, Task Force Scorpion went there and flipped the script from being hunted to hunting. So they locked down those routes and got aggressive and made it a lot harder for people to operate. So, people today talk about what is work like. It's clean and simple. It isn't. War isn't. And firefights, it's not. Yes, some may seem like what you see in movie to some degree, but some last seconds, which seem like forever. They're unpredictable. It just all of a sudden, people are on the street, and then next thing you know, fucking everybody disappears, and and you got to be able to adapt. I mean, you got to be able to shift in a minute because the battlefield is very fluid. And one thing never fall in love with your plan. That's one thing that that was completely always pushed onto us, because the plan will always change, and you had to be able to change on the fly, and be able to shift and reroute or whatever else, because you needed to stay one step ahead of the enemy as best as you could. So, but it was. I think back to so those were some of the best times. A lot of us came back. We took this unit of just all these young kids. By then, I was considered one of the older folks in the unit, in the sense that because all these kids were who are in the late 30s, early 40s now. These kids were already they came back changed, and some of them with PTSD, some of them and some of them unfortunately ended up taking their own lives because of the things and how they came back. And I like to say, when out of the many years I've been in therapy, is that a part of me, is still patrolling. There's a part of me, the part that's lost of me, my innocence, maybe some of my innocence, to some degree. And that young man is still out there on a Humvee, driving around Iraq, still pulling patrol. And maybe some of us who were there, maybe you feel the same way. So, but I just want to take this last minute or so just to give a huge shout out to Daniel Malik. He was an amazing kid, and I call him kid because I was older than he was. we ended, one of my best memories, aside from him being really funny, um, but one of my fondest memories of him is that we were on a retrograde, kind of going back, and we were in Kuwait, and we stopped at this place where we were able to shower, and there was an actual pool there, and it was just, we felt so human. And because um, uh, he was Egyptian, or his heritage is Egyptian. They were serving shawarmas there, which is basically like a pita bread with some beef sliced into it. And I was like, "Oh, hey, what is it?" And he goes, "Oh, you're gonna like it. It's like a taco. I'm not Mexican, but I got it." And he goes, and drink this orange drink here because it's really good. It'll go well with it. So I ended up eating like 3 or 4 of those things, and but and later on we reconnected a couple of times at some of our reunions that we've had in the past. It's just unfortunate just to see that that I guess I'm getting at the age where you know people are going to pass away for one thing or the other, natural or unfortunate reasons. So, but I just want to convey my heart to everybody from 4th LAR Battalion, and also Daniel Malik's family as well. From the bottom of my heart, I'm sorry for your loss, and we'll catch you on the flip side, buddy. Till Valhalla, as we say. So, if you've been ruminating and you've been, you know, you're in a bad spot right now, I can promise you that that time will pass. It sucks going through it. I've been there more than more than I can count. But I can promise you this: that if you just see it through, there's a light at the end of that tunnel. So if you want to talk, you can hit me up, talk to me. Let me talk to you off that ledge. I can give you the resources and point you in the right direction to get you the help, because we don't want you to be another statistic. I don't want to be talking about you here on the show and saying good things about you and how we remember you. I want to be talking with you. I want you to be here with us. Okay, so you know please call somebody and do a buddy check this weekend for me. Okay, so with that being said, folks, I think this is a good place to stop. I just want to say ice Tomas, the Daisuke. I'll see you next week. I have an amazing guest coming up, and we're going to talk about some great things that will help you in the long run with your taxes. Just giving you a heads up. All right, bye bye everybody, take care.